Welcome to another episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast brought to you by CEAT Tires. I am your host for this week, Ashwin. I'm joined by my brother Varun. DJ is going to join us in the second half of the show with a very exciting interview. But we're here to talk about my prediction being correct for the series. Varun, how are you feeling? Right, first off, India beat England 2-1, but then you lost the prediction contest. So now that I'm the host, I'm going to give myself 2 points for the ODI series win because we won it in tough conditions after losing the tosses. You get 0 points for being wrong. DJ gets 0 points for being wrong, which leaves the final tally, I think, for the total series at me at 2.5, you at 2, and DJ still at, I think, 0.5. So how does it feel to come second place?
I think there has to be some semblance of fairness. At least I stuck to 1 point maximum per right prediction and negative points for other factors. So you've gone against the rules of the game, but well done on the ODI series.
I think the rules of the game are defined by the host for that week is what we established last week. So anyway, for those who haven't followed, we have a little prediction contest going on. Basically, what is very clear is DJ is in third place. I would say
he just doesn't want England to win even one game.
Yeah, he has no desire to be right if it comes to England winning. And then I'd say mathematically, you and I tied on this one. So let's take that. Let's maybe settle on that. But very exciting, right? It's always a fun start to a week when India has just won a series. We're going to talk you through a little bit about what happened and then just discuss a little about India's approach, overall flow, how they're looking at the limited overs format. I mean, I have been pretty vocally critical about how India looked at a T20 series. But Varun, before we get into it, I mean, winning a T20 series against the top-ranked side in the world, winning an ODI series against the world champions, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I can't complain, man. That's the thing with the series that has just happened. We have to acknowledge that in limited overs cricket, England is the best side. So to do a 3-2 and a 2-1 over them in T20s and ODIs is a very good result. Now, as we discussed the third ODI, I genuinely feel England should have won that. And it was unfortunate that they didn't, but it was a good fight all around. So I'm really looking forward to deep dive into some of these topics.
Unfortunate for them, right?
Yeah, unfortunate for them, and it's just the brand of cricket they play. That's why I like their team in limited overs cricket so much. Of course, I wanted India to win, but I don't think India played their best cricket.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the brand, which we'll talk about again at the end, is it works most of the time. It does fail, right? And we saw it fail in under pressure of good bowling. So anyway, let's talk about it. Varun, do you want to talk our listeners through the first ODI? So obviously series started yet again with Kohli losing a toss. Take us through it from there.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's no point mentioning the toss at all. So India were put into bat. Overall in this game, India went in with the plan that they had for ODIs after the 2019 World Cup. You had Rohit and Dhawan opening, Kohli at 3, Iyer at 4, Rahul at 5, and Hardik Pandya at 6. Now, that to me is a middle order that India has really worked hard to create after like so many years of it being muddled up, not being sure what to do. So they had to stick with it. They went with this middle order. Personally, I thought it was a decent choice. But then they also picked Krunal Pandya, right? It was his ODI debut. And it was an interesting choice because he's replacing Jadeja. And so India have kind of signaled with this that they have to play that 5 bowlers plus Hardik Pandya. So I think that was interesting, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the series. India made 317 for 5. Shikhar Dhawan got a 98. Very unfortunate to miss that 100. Remember, he's making a comeback after a while as well. He's not playing tests. He's not playing T20s. So right off the bat, he started off well. Kohli with another 50. Rahul, much needed 62 of 43. He doesn't speak much about strike rate, but he caught up there towards the end. And a fantastic debut performance by Krunal Pandya. 50, I think the only Indian to hit 50 on debut in an ODI, if I'm not mistaken. So
the fastest 50 by a debutant, any country, not just
by any country. Yeah. So that was great. I mean, a lot of emotion there with the Pandya brothers as well, having lost their father. You could see genuine joy on Hardik's face. You could see Krunal really wanted this for his dad. So India hit 317 for 5. You know, in today's day and age, I think 320 is probably a par score. When you're on India, you probably want to be 330. When you're playing England, you probably want to be 350. So it was always going to be something that, you know, as Indian fans, we were not sure if 317 is enough, especially the way England started, right? Roy and Bairstow, my God, I didn't realize that they are one of the most successful opening pairs. Roy 46, Bairstow 94. At one point, they were, I think, 135 for no loss. That's when they lost their first wicket. And they just kept going. So at that point, you're thinking this game is done. Let's look forward to the second ODI. There's no way India is going to come back from this. Stokes comes out at 3, Morgan at 4, Butler at 5. Just look at that lineup. It's insane. But they did have a collapse. And I think that was good bowling by India, some good tactical captaincy moves, and just sticking it out. So Prasidh Krishna, the other debutant, picked up 4 wickets. Shardul, who we talk a little bit more about, picked up 3. Bhuvi, great as usual, economy rate of 3.3. And unfortunate, the only guy who didn't really get into the game was Kuldeep Yadav. So lots to talk more about that. Ashwin, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, pretty great first ODI. I mean, from 135 for 0 in 14 overs, England honestly had no business getting all out for 250. So I guess that's what you mean when you say the brand of cricket failed, right?
Yeah, and Morgan came out and said that if we lose games in this fashion, we're okay to lose. We don't want to change the way we play. So, yeah, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But generally, that brand of cricket is changing the way ODIs are being looked at.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the cliche, but if we're going to go down, we'll go down swinging, right? And that's a really interesting approach versus trying to become conservative going into a shell. But India walked into the second ODI with a 1-0 lead. Fantastic. Out they come. This time, the openers don't do great, right? Dhawan, who's had a magnificent first ODI, ended up getting out quickly. Rohit got out quickly as well. Of course, goes without saying we batted first, right? Because as much as losing the toss is a certainty, it's also a certainty that Morgan didn't want to bat first, ever, right? Like they just wanted to chase over and over. And in this match, you understood why. Kohli looked great for a 66. I specifically wanted to highlight in the second ODI KL Rahul, right? Walks in at number 4. Just different situation, completely different match situation to that first match where he walked in the 9th over and made what was a great century. Just looked so good. Nice to see. Paced it well. Ended up picking 108 of 114 balls. The lower order came, or maybe late middle to lower order came great too. Rishabh Pant made a magnificent 77. I mean, this guy is just in such great nick, right? Varun, I want to just ask you about Pant this series.
Yeah, and remember, he's not part of the limited overs setup for India. He has come in only because Shreyas Iyer got an injury, and by the way, might miss half or more of the IPL, which is extremely disappointing as Delhi Capital fans. But we'll talk about a preview in our next show, our next episode. But Rishabh Pant was not part of the scheme of things. They got Rahul to keep. They were very clear. And I actually was surprised because I thought Sky was going to come in. I thought Sky is a great middle order ODI. To be honest, we've not seen him ever play an ODI. I don't watch the List A 50 over games. But I thought Sky was, with this whole brand of cricket that Kohli wants to play in ODI, I thought he was a straight kind of shoe into this team. But Pant, I mean, form player, momentum player, we've said it before, he played really, really well. And I think it's important for everyone to see that he doesn't play irrationally like he probably was playing a couple of years ago. He's assessing every ball. He knows where to attack. He's reading the game situation. He's understanding who his partner in, and frankly, showing a lot of maturity.
Yeah, really well said. I mean, 77 and 78 after missing out on the first ODI, phenomenal. I mean, I think the reason they brought in Pant is because if you look at Rohit, Kohli, Rahul, Hardik, and then maybe an Iyer, that's 4 out of 4 or 5 right-handers, right? So Pant benefited from being a left-hander, and hey, he made it count this match. So India ended on 336 for 6, what felt like a great score. I mean, like you said, Varun, more than a par score. Sorry, man. Like Tiger guy's calling me. Let me just pause for one more second. I'm going to pause. And so England, as they came out to chase then, right, you have a 336 to make, 337 to make. Like you said, Roy and Bairstow, phenomenal opening partnership, again got to over 115 overs. And then Ben Stokes came in. As much as we all hate this guy, and it's hard to appreciate them, it was a phenomenal batting partnership. I mean, I couldn't watch the match almost. It was so painful to see Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes strike at over 100 each. I mean, Ben Stokes made 99 off 52 balls. I think the only saving grace was that he got out at 99. But honestly, you and I discussed this before. I hate to do it a little, but it's the right thing to do. That this week's CEAT SecuraDrive Players of the Week are Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes for that partnership. And great that India won the series, but full credit to those two batsmen for that partnership. I mean, DJ likes to say the SecuraDrive is the thrill of speed with complete control. And man, did it look like they embodied that today, right? On the second ODI, phenomenal century from Bairstow. Bairstow has now gone and said he's set his goal on being England's highest ever ODI century scorer. So he has 5 more to do to overtake Joe Root. But phenomenal partnership. I mean, nothing to say more about that match. If you can chase 336 in 43 overs, they just dominated, right, Varun?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, this is the first week we've given the CEAT SecuraDrive to two players. So they've forced it out of us. I think they made 87 runs between the 31st and 35th over, if I'm not mistaken.
And those are supposed to be the quiet period. Like that's
Yeah.
what you think about as kind of the quiet consolidation phase, right?
Yeah, I genuinely thought I was watching a highlights package when they were batting. It was amazing. Honestly, Stokes is I think he's one of my favorite cricketers in the world. Like, and I say cricketers, not batsmen, not bowlers. He is a proper cricketer.
But he's also one of your you can't really like him as a bloke, can you?
No, I have nothing to do with him as a bloke, but absolutely fantastic. I mean, to do that on in 43 overs is just unbelievable. Like, I think England have hit 480 before. They've spoken about going to 500. When they won the match, I was like, hey, let's just bowl out 7 overs and see if they get to 450. It might be fun to watch.
Geez, it would have been painful. It was already painful enough. But let's also not forget Stokes has picked up 3 for 34 in the first ODI, right? So just great all-round cricket from him. So a little bit painful, right, to make 336 and lose. That's the second 300-plus score India put up. The second time the first time England got to 300-plus, they made 250 in the first match. Going into the third match, I mean, I guess it was kind of nice, right, that there was 1-1 and the series had something at stake. So, Varun, how did you feel about the third match?
Yeah, I was excited for the third game because it's always fun to watch a series decider. So it was always going to be good. I think the thing about this England team is when you go into bat, you know whether you're batting first or chasing. You're going to be chasing around 330 or need to post minimum 330 on the board to even feel like you could have a chance to win this game. So in effect, I think it doesn't matter whether you bat first or bowl first, but the third ODI, India somehow managed to pull it off. They again batted first. This time, Rohit and Dhawan got off to a decent start. I would say pretty quick. I have to say that I read a weird stat on Twitter that said they hit 65 for 0 in 10 overs, and that was the quickest that any opening pair for India that any opening pair for India has put on since the 2011 World Cup at home in India.
What?
Yeah.
There's no way that's true.
Yeah. So I read that. I think we should validate that. But it was just absurd to even think of that, which is great. Virender Sehwag was the reason that hasn't happened in the last 10 years. But Rohit and Dhawan aren't bad players. So especially at home, for them to have not crossed 65 in 10 overs is unbelievable.
I mean, we know Rohit starts slow, right? So that may be part of it. And that he accelerates later, but that's insane. So,
yeah,
wow, great.
So, and that's why we should just make a point after we talk about the third ODI is to talk about India's approach to the game, right? ODI game. So anyway, Kohli failed here, and I think that would have hurt him really badly. He just keeps getting out to the spinners. This was set up perfectly for Kohli to come in, but it wasn't to be. Pant was promoted to number 4, and boy, did he take advantage. We don't have to speak too much about him again because you guys know we love him, but he hit 78. Hardik Pandya hit 64. In fact, when both of them were batting, at one point, it really looked like they were going for a lot more than 329. And Pandya said this at the end of the innings as well. He said, Rishabh and I just got out at the wrong point because otherwise we were actually thinking of hitting 390. So that's where the ODI game has evolved. Krunal Pandya did well. Shardul Thakur did well. I do want to give a call out to Shardul Thakur as well, right? For me, Ashwin, this week there's a new CEAT award, and that is the CEAT All-Round Performer Award. And I'm going to give that to Shardul because, man, the way he hit those sixes, I thought the game was over. I thought Krunal Pandya was going to be under pressure. He's going to have to swing the bat. Krunal Pandya didn't hit a single boundary in that innings, and Thakur hit 1-4 and 3 sixes. So I'm not even talking about his bowling yet. We will get there. But for me, he's our CEAT all-round performer of the week, and he just has this knack of picking up wickets at the right time.
Can I just let the record state that we normally pre-agreed to the CEAT performers of the week? We agreed to Stokes and Bairstow. We agreed every week so far, and Varun chose to blindside me this time. So let's just let the record state that Shardul was an unexpected one for me, but I'll give it to you.
I think even Shardul won't believe that he's got this award, but we have to give it to him. England then comes out chasing 329, off to not the start they expected. Not that what we're used to seeing. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar gets both Roy and Bairstow cheaply. Stokes comes out at number 3 and doesn't do much as well. And you see, what happened is that India just kept picking wickets at the right time, right? It was almost consistent. 14 for 1, 28 for 2, 68 for 3, 95 for 4, 155 for 5. And then the tail kind of started wagging. You started seeing some big shots from a Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid. But the guy to call out here is really Sam Curran. Sam Curran hit 95 of 83. He got England to a score of 322, and they lost only by 7 runs. And Ashwin, I don't know if you saw that last over, but on the first ball, he tried to take a double, slipped at the non-strikers end, and so I think that cost them the game, just slipping at the crease, because otherwise Sam Curran was looking fantastic. So very unfortunate for him. I think in the history of the ODI game, there's only been one other batsman who's hit a 95 at number 8, and that was Chris Wokes. So just think about that. In 2016, Chris Wokes hit 95. In 2021, Sam Curran has hit 95. Both are batting at number 8. If that doesn't talk to you about the depth of the English team, I don't know what does. It's happened in the last 5 years, and England were unfortunate. I think India dropped so many catches. Hardik 2, Shardul 1, Natarajan 1. It was a disaster on the field, not something we're used to. I do want to give a call out to Kohli's catch. He seemed to be going the wrong way and turned and took a brilliant diving catch. But generally, yes, I felt good about this win, but I thought England deserved it, man. To almost chase 329 with your number 8 hitting the runs is fantastic.
Yeah, great summary. Great series win. We will take it. We'll celebrate. Just a fantastic visual to see Prasidh pick up the trophy. I think I tweeted this. I'm going to misremember. But like Akshar picked up the trophy in Australia as a debutant. Natarajan did as a debutant. Then we had, who did it in the ODIs and the T20s? We had debutants pick it up. We had
I think
Kishan and Sky both picked up the T20 trophy. It's just been phenomenal. Like some of the messages I've got is like, what is going on with the bench strength, right? Like how ridiculous is India's bench strength? But great move. Varun, before we talk more about India, let me just ask you about this stat you shared about the number 8s for England, right? What does that say about approach? You talked a little about Crunell playing at, I guess it'd be number 7. But what does it say about England that it's so important to them that they have enough all-round performers that your number 8 can come in and save you a match from a tough situation?
It says a lot about the way that they have made an effort to build their team. It doesn't happen overnight. If I remember correctly, at the 2015 World Cup in Australia, England did not perform well. In 2011, they did not perform well, right? They took a decision. They looked for players. They groomed players. I mean, I want to check the stats, and I think 7 people bowled for England in this third ODI, right? 7 players bowled, and that's when Mark Wood was not feeling that great on the field. To have a team where you've got Ben Stokes who bats at 3 and bowls 7 overs, and you've got Sam Curran who bats at 8 and bowls 5 overs, everything in between is just a bonus, right? I think if India actually had Stokes and Sam Curran, they would have been our 2 out of our top 5 bowlers in the ODI bowling lineup. So I've always said this: when you have players like Stokes and Callis who bat at 3 and can bowl 7 to 8 overs in an ODI, you're going to have a different team dynamic. You're going to have a different team balance. And yes, when you've got Moeen, Sam Curran, Adil Rashid, all of whom can bat, your top 5 or 6 are going to go very strong. And that's where I think interesting that Joe Root plays a part in this ODI team where everyone bats around him.
Yeah, very interesting. Very well said. So England's approach, I don't think it's changing. I don't think it's going anywhere soon. It cost them both the first and third ODI this time. I guess the first one. Phenomenal third ODI. Let me ask you quickly before we talk about India's approach, which we could do forever. I think my messages to you guys at the end was, I'm still angry, right? And so that's part of being the annoying Indian fan, and I'll admit that we all are them. But I was kind of angry. I said, how can you put so much pressure on the England side? And then with, I think it was 40-something runs needed, Shardul came and gave an 18-run over. Then he dropped a catch. Then Natarajan dropped a catch. Hardik had already dropped 2 earlier in the day. Like, what is going on? How could you put so much pressure with the bat and bowl so well and just not back it up with fielding? Varun, any thoughts?
I don't know if it was something with the ball. I don't know if there was dew. I don't know if it was I don't know what it is. It could have just been the pressure, but it was shocking actually. It was really shocking to see that level of fielding in the series decider. I have to say, I think it was an aberration. I don't think that was the norm. But India has a knack of being put under pressure, whether it's test matches or ODI. Sometimes we just can't wrap up the tail. And thanks to the nature of T20 cricket, in ODIs as well, if you've got 100 to hit off 70 balls with even 6 down, you're probably going to be still struggling. So it's not easy, but do remember, guys, like our top bowling lineup was not playing. So there is a little bit of pressure. Shardul, no matter how good he is, he does leak some runs. So I think there's a place for him in this team. He's done very well, but India has got to figure out whether to bowl him at the end or stick to him in the middle overs where he has a knack of picking up wickets.
So let's talk about Shardul a little. I think you said it right. Bumrah, Bhuvi, Shami probably are our top 3 current quick bowlers in the lineup, on paper at least. And yet Shardul has this knack, right? If I'm looking at it right, he picked up the most T20 wickets. He picked up 8. He also ended up with 7 wickets in the ODI, which is the most from both sides. He gave, 158 runs off of his 23 odd overs. So I'm trying to do some quick math there. I mean, he went at 6.72. So Bhuvi had the best economy rate for the Indian bowlers. Shardul was second best. Prasidh, Natarajan were more expensive. And yet, it feels like he picks up these wickets at clutch times, right? There were a couple of points when he picked up 2 wickets in the over. So talk to me about Shardul, right? I have a friend who says you got to play a guy like him because he's a confidence player, right? He just brings energy and confidence. And yeah, he'll give some runs sometimes. And let me state for the record, for our listeners who've been listening to it for a while, I have full credit to him, man. He's a great cricketer, fought super hard, bowled really well, picked up great wickets. I still am not seeing what I need to see for a guy who can say should be consistently one of our starters in a full strength team with no injuries. But do you disagree with that? Do you think he wiggles into this team?
No, I don't disagree with that. I think what you're saying is right. I think you play the people on their strength. I think a lot of talk has gone on about how Shardul is India's perfect number 8, that he could bat with Jadeja the last 5 overs. Honestly, if it comes down to Shardul, we've said this before, I don't think India's going to win a match on Shardul's batting. Sure, he can contribute, he can get you 20, 30 runs quickly in 1 out of maybe 5 or 7 games, but India has to pick the players based on their speciality. And so I feel like Shardul is going to be someone who plays a lot of ODIs and T20s as a break for the top 3 bowlers. Every time you're going to go out in a bilateral series, you're going to have 2 out of the top 3 playing with Shardul, and that's really workload management. But the day it comes to a T20 World Cup or an ODI World Cup, I don't think Shardul is going to start.
Is it fair on a guy to play him as much in bilateral series for him to deliver results? Arguably, he picked up good, and then say, "Hey, but you're still not going to play our World Cups."
Yeah, I think World Cups have a different strategy. So I think if you left him out of the squad, it's unfair. But you always start a World Cup or a big tournament with your best 11 that you believe is going to work, and you make tweaks. I would love to see any stat that says a team has played the same game, the same 11 in the first game of a World Cup and the last game of a World Cup. So I think there's enough room for him to come in, but I feel like he's only going to get better if he plays ODIs and T20s at the international level. So India should keep playing him. India should use him as the bowler to manage the workload of the top 3. And it's early days, man. Who knows? In 5 years, Shardul may be batting at 7 for us and bowling 10 overs. So that's what we have to hope for.
Let's talk about Prasidh then, right? Another debutant in the series. But I hope you appreciate that I just ignored your comment on Shardul in a few years, but that's fine. Let's talk about Prasidh. 4 for 54. I think that was in the second. That was the first match, right? What did he do in the second? He picked up 2 for 58. He looked weak in the third. Varun, you and I know this. We from corporate world, and we talk about like momentum and kind of recency bias is such an important thing. So he left in that third match not finishing his quota of overs, because as did Krunal, by the way. Neither of them bowled their full quota of overs in that third match. So Shardul leaves the third match with 4 for with all the positive, but Prasidh did pick up a 4 for in his first ODI. So how do you feel about him as a talent, in at least maybe as bench strength?
Yeah, great bench strength, great net bowler for now. I'm sure he'll find his way into the team, like as a top 15 even at some point in the future, but very early days for me. So very happy that he got the 4 wickets on debut. After that, seemed a little bit lackluster, but come on, let's be fair. It's his first ODI, his first 3 ODIs. So let me just say I'm glad that Kohli stuck with him for all 3 games. That was important for his confidence. And he's going to be in the mix. He's definitely going to be in the mix of things.
Right. So let's wrap this section up before we go to a great interview after the half, talking a little bit about India's batting. I tried to focus more on bowling because otherwise we would have spent the entire time talking about batting. But without looking at the stats, who do you think made the most number of runs for India this series?
I think Dhawan.
Dhawan was second.
Pant.
Pant was third.
Pandya.
Pandya was somewhere down on the list.
KL
Rahul.
KL Rahul, yeah.
Made a century and a 50. But the reason I asked you that is because we are not going to remember his century in that second match. And because it wasn't, exciting. And he made only 7 runs in the third. Right?
KL Rahul makes centuries and India loses. How many times have you seen that? How many times have you seen in the IPL where KL Rahul hits 80 runs, 90 runs, and Punjab loses? It's just unfortunate, man. He's a better player than people are giving him credit for.
I mean, but isn't that what they used to say about Sachin? This might be getting politically controversial and stuff, but isn't that what they used to say about Sachin? I think Sachin made 14 out of his 49 centuries and ODIs in the losing cause. To make 40, like Joe Root's entire century tally is 16, and Sachin has made 14 in a losing cause in an ODI, right?
Yeah, I think different times. We shouldn't get into that discussion. It's different times. India was losing in general there, and yeah, it was just different times. It's just sad for Rahul. But about India's approach to the game, I think for ODI cricket, India, like we said at the start of this episode, they've got a style of cricket, and notice how I didn't use brand there because we said it too much. A style of cricket that depends around the top 3 batting till the 30 or the 35th over. These guys score big, they score centuries, they score slow, and it has worked for India in the past. If you look at India's win percentage, I'm sure you'll see it is one of the top 2 or 3 in ODIs for the last 5 years. We have not done well in tournaments after beyond a certain stage, but let's also be fair that we didn't have a great middle order. We opened the World Cup with Vijay Shankar at 4. You had Kedar Jadhav and Dhoni, who's not in his peak. So that's your middle order. And so India is trying very hard to fix that. But the challenge is that I feel you have to be able to differentiate between a Rahul and an Iyer and what their game is. It feels like they're both similar players, and if they're going to be if they're going to be picked at the expense of Pant, something needs to change in that lineup. So I think India can't change their approach overnight. In ODI cricket, it's not as simple as saying make Kishan open. He's never played ODI cricket before. Dhawan has not done a bad job. It's just about understanding who is the aggressor, at what pace and tempo do you want to take this game. And if you've got Pant and Pandya at the end, then just make sure that Pant, Pandya, and Jadeja are unleashing when necessary. But I don't think India has to change the game too much. Maybe one or two player tweaks here or there.
I don't think I can add anything better to that. Really, really well said. Let me ask you finally before we take a break. 10, 12, 13, 12 days till IPL fever. How pumped are you?
I'm super excited. It feels like the next 10 days are going to be a big void. I can't wait for our fantasy league to be set up as well. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to cricket every night for 6 weeks. It is just the best time of the year.
The second IPL in the last 6 months or so. Just unbelievable. Very excited to have it. Thanks for staying with us during this India-England series. It's been a ton of fun. Great to see us win all 3 formats. I don't think any of us predicted victory in all 3 formats across. So just great to see. Phenomenal stuff. We're going to take a quick CEAT Tire strategic timeout. On the other side of this break, DJ is back with a fantastic interview with Gulu Ezekiel, author and all around cricket enthusiast. So stay tuned for that. We're going to take a quick CEAT Tire strategic timeout, and we will be right back.
Welcome back from that CEAT Strategic timeout. And we are delighted to be joined yet again on the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast by the cricket writer and historian Gulu Ezekiel. Gulu, thank you so much for joining us on the Edges and Sledges Podcast and for being a return guest.
Thanks, Dhananjay. It's great to be back with you.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think we recorded almost exactly a year ago. I was looking at our episodes and it dropped on the 22nd of March 2020
Right.
in the midst of the COVID pandemic. It was called Cricket in the Time of Coronavirus. So, I mean, 1 year on, we're still going in the
Well, not
pandemic.
much has
So,
changed, has
who would
it?
have thought we'd be here?
Yeah, well, not much has changed
Yeah,
in one
yeah,
year,
yeah.
unfortunately.
But there's some light at the end of the tunnel with
I
vaccination
hope
and
so.
stuff.
That's right.
So, going to try and stay positive on that front. But Gulu, it is amazing to have you back. What have you been doing in the 1 year? I mean, you said not much has changed, but you've been pretty busy, right?
I decided, Dhananjay, that instead of vegetating at home and getting isolated and depressed, the best thing to do was to keep the brain ticking and to keep writing continuously. And since October till now, March, 4 of my books have been released in the last 6 months. This is the latest book. And so I'm delighted that you're having me on to talk about this book. I can honestly say that this has been my favorite book to write, and I surely hope that the readers also respond positively to it.
Absolutely. And just to let our listeners know, what we're talking about is the book that you've written about myth busting.
That's right.
Behind the Indian cricket, behind the headlines. So,
That's right.
Gulu, it's a perfect day for you to be talking about this because this morning, actually, one of our listeners and friends tweeted in telling us a story about how Rahul Dravid wore gloves in the classroom to write notes and things like that. So, I mean, it's and then we obviously, it was a very impressive looking story that he wanted to break his new gloves in to be able to bat in the Ranji semi-finals and the finals, and he went and scored hundreds and talks about his dedication and things. But I mean, let's talk to you about that because you're the myth buster. It seems like it's fake news, right? That one.
Well, I'll tell you something, Dhananjay. There are lots of stories around Indian cricket, or for that matter, world cricket. Some of them are quite harmless. I mean, like this one about Dravid. To be honest, it's news to me. I have not heard this one before. But it's not something which is really worth exploring or busting. It's a very harmless, and you could even say it's a quite a cute and sweet story. So what I have done in my book, there are some very negative and damaging myths about Indian cricket and Indian cricketers. And someone who's been passionately following cricket for exactly 50 years now, since 1971. I was also, when I was young, I was also part of these myths. I mean, we used to, hear all kinds of stories. And back then, of course, there was no social media, no mobiles, no podcasts, no net. So there was no way of confirming the stories or whether they were myths or true or untrue. But in the last 10 years or so, with the rise of social media, the term WhatsApp University. I mean, the forwards which I get on Indian cricket and Indian sport, they've been increasingly agitating me actually. And people will not accept that they are falsehoods also, because I probably fall into this category of WhatsApp uncle, you see. So you get a forward and you just keep forwarding it I'm in the WhatsApp uncle age group. But it irritates me when these WhatsApp forwards or Twitter or Facebook stories come up which have no basis in fact, and which, as I said, tend to be rather disparaging of Indian cricketers also. So I have, over the last 50 years, the stories I have accumulated and the myths and the tales, I have been making mental notes. I've been making notes in my book. And for a few years, I have been mulling whether to write a book or not. Then in 2016 or 2017, my cricket guru, the legendary author David Frith, he wrote an article in English magazine about these myths concerning mainly English cricket. And he also, over the years, used to get very agitated by it. And I've been in contact with David for more than 40 years. So we would exchange emails and, we'd kind of get worked up over these myths. And he wrote a wonderful article. And I think that was the real impetus for me that, wow, if my guru, David Frith, can write an article on Indian cricket, or English cricket myths, then perhaps it's time for my book. And David was a tremendous support and inspiration to me. So I owe a lot to him also.
And so you decided to write this book. Obviously, you've also written books which include biographies of Sachin,
Yes.
Dravid, Ganguly.
No, Sachin, Saurav, and Dhoni, not Dravid, right?
Right. So Dravid's the one that's left out.
Not
Of that.
not
But you
not
also
me.
wrote about Speed Merchants with Vijay Lokapalli
That's
last year,
correct.
which is one of the
That's
4
right.
books that came out.
Yeah.
But myth busting in particular, and as you say, in this age of WhatsApp and social media, and where things travel so quickly, it's such an important book. And I think we all need to be very thankful for you to taking the time to write it. So tell us and tell our listeners a little bit about the kinds of myths you've been busting. Because I, for one, I mean, the book, I haven't read the book as yet, but I'm hoping to read it very quickly and very soon. But what's the flavor of the kind of myths that you've been busting, and particularly some of the more harmful ones that you've mentioned?
Well, I'll tell you something unusual happened only yesterday. Some youngster posted on Twitter that Charlie Griffith and Wes Hall were the fast bowlers when India went to the West Indies in 1962, when Nari Contractor was seriously injured by a Charlie Griffith bouncer. And there's one chapter in my book about that. So I had to correct this young man and tell him that, look, that was not in the test series. That was in a tour game against Barbados. And he took it in very good spirits, and he says, appreciated the fact that I corrected him. And I did tell him that I did make a plug for my book and told him that, there's a chapter on that incident in my book. Now, I'll tell you the myth around that particular incident is that Charlie Griffith, who had been on a couple of occasions, both in West Indies and England, called for chucking, bowled a bouncer to Nari Contractor. Now, if you go by the West Indian eyewitness accounts, they'll tell you it was not a bouncer, it was a ball which Nari Contractor ducked into. If you go by the Indian eyewitness accounts, including journalists who are present, they'll tell you it's a bouncer, right? And so I have in each chapter, it's not just that I busted the myths with my own opinions. I've actually quoted eyewitness accounts. I've given links from YouTube. I have quoted from old newspapers and magazines and books to strengthen my case about these myths. So a lot of research went into this book, and in fact, at the back of the book, if you see biblio, the biblio section itself is 6 pages. So books, magazines, websites, documentaries. So it was, and I had been researching this over many years. But as I said, the incentive came 3 or 4 years ago when David Frith wrote that article. So that's one chapter. Another chapter concerns the second tight test ever played, which was at Chennai in 1986 between India and Australia. Now, I had the good fortune to be with the newspaper in Madras, Indian Express, and I was in the press box of that test match. So obviously, it was a great historic occasion. But there's so many myths around that match also, and many of these myths have been, let us say, propagated by some Australian cricketers also. But with video evidence and with my own eyewitness accounts, I have been able to disprove some of these myths. And I also interviewed the umpire who gave the final decision, V.K. Ramaswamy. I'm sorry.
Maninder Singh.
No, Maninder Singh was the last batsman.
Yeah.
V. Vikram Raju was the umpire. So I was able to interview him. I met him in Delhi a couple of years ago. And the other umpire, Dara Dotiwala, unfortunately has passed away. He was the square leg umpire. So with my own first-hand account, many of these incidents also are first-hand accounts because I have been a journalist for 40 years. So I have been, I've seen many matches around the world. I've met many players around the world. So I was able to give their opinions and also back it up with my own eyewitness accounts. And fortunately, YouTube also is a tremendous resource as far as old footage is concerned. Then there's this. This is a particular bugbear of mine, Dhananjay. This whole business of so-called monkading. Okay,
Yes.
you know what monkading is. First of all,
Or browning, as we like to call it.
exactly. First of all, I don't like the term for the simple reason that there's a stigma attached to it. The fact that there's a stigma attached to it is very offensive to the memory of one of the greatest all-rounders in cricket history, and not only Indian cricket history. One must remember that Vinu Mankad remains the only cricketer in history to twice take 8 wickets in an innings and twice score a double century. No one in history has done that before or since. Now, I have researched archival material from newspapers in Australia at the time, and also newspapers in Australia going back to the 1850s. Fortunately, Australian newspapers are very well archived. The Australian government has got it all on the net from the 1850s. The first so-called munkading was actually from the 1850s. The first test match was certainly Vinu Mankad when he ran out Bill Brown. But I've given the background to that, and also I have given, people say, well, many umpires will tell you, including Simon Toffel told me in Delhi a couple of years ago, why not just call it a run out? So when you tell the people that on Twitter who keep on using this term, they'll say, well, we have to differentiate what kind of run out it is. So I have come up with a term which I hope will catch on. Bowlers run out, BRO. Bro. Why not call it bowlers? Why not call it bowlers run out instead of this nonsensical munkading?
Oh, this is great. This is going to catch on. We'll make sure that it catches on.
I certainly hope so. And
this is brilliant.
The point is, Vinu Mankad and his family have been very hurt over the years that there's a negative connotation to this. And I have absolutely no reason to doubt that it is a perfectly legitimate manner of dismissal. And all this spirit of cricket humbug, to be honest, it's just nonsense. So I have made a lot of efforts in that particular chapter to try and remove the stigma and the myths around.
This sounds amazing. Also because it's only 2 letters away from the actual first person who was broed in a test match. So Brown, short form bro, easy.
Yeah, well, nice that too. Brown
run out.
Yeah, and in fact, that's one of the biggest chapters in the book. It's 21 pages, and the name of the chapter is "The Many Myths of Munkading."
Wow, you've picked the right podcast for this because we're big fans of run-outs at the bowler's end, but you've shortened it. I think this is fantastic. This is fantastic. A bro is the future.
and I tell you, there's so much hypocrisy about the spirit of cricket nonsense, and it's the same cricketers who condemn this BRO bowlers run out who have actually been, they have destroyed the spirit of cricket in so many ways themselves. So I have actually targeted these guys and given examples of how they have gone against the spirit of cricket. So it's a lot of hypocrisy and humbug,
This is going to be a great read. I actually can't wait to get my hands on it. Gulu, seriously, it's going to be amazing.
There's another chapter which has been another issue which has been on the top of my mind since 1983. That is the Prudential World Cup, which India, of course, won under Kapil Dev's captaincy. Now, among the myths of the 1983 World Cup is that Kapil Dev's 175 not out against Zimbabwe at Tunbridge Wells was not telecast. What was the reason for the non-telecast of that historical match?
So, from what we hear, it's a BBC strike, but that's all we know.
That is actually a myth. I found out from the BBC producers of the time and from their sons also that BBC actually telecast 2 matches that day.
Is it?
You see, there were 4 matches a day during the Prudential World Cup in 1983. And BBC only had 2 channels back then.
Right.
So they would have to pick and choose which matches to telecast.
And so they chose not to telecast the India versus Zimbabwe match because it was 2 low-ranked teams playing.
Nobody could have cared less about India's chances in that tournament, including our beloved players themselves. Let's face it. Okay. So BBC chose not to telecast any of India's group matches, except one when they played against Australia, the return match, which India lost, which was telecast in Australia and England. Otherwise, until the semi-final, no match of India was telecast for the simple reason they did not have crew and they did not have channels. So that particular day, in fact, I traced the TV listings from the British newspapers, which showed that 2 matches were telecast that day, which was West Indies versus Australia and Pakistan versus England. Okay.
Of course. At that time, that would have made sense. Naturally.
And the 2 matches which were not telecast were India, Zimbabwe, and New Zealand, Sri Lanka.
Wow. So this is blowing my mind. I mean, all my life, all I've heard is BBC strike. That's why Tunbridge Wells was not telecast. That's why there's no footage of the 175 not out, which is it's an epic innings that changed the course of cricket. Almost,
it is. And now let me tell you, Dhananjay, there's a twist to the tale also. What the twist is, I'm not going to reveal it now.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And
But
you
let me-
shouldn't reveal any further, actually,
No, but
because
let me
this
tell
is
you-
whet everyone's appetite.
I have managed to trace the producer at the time, and I have managed to trace the camera people who are on duty with BBC Sports, thanks to the wonders of the internet and email, and also with help from English journalists. There's a senior English journalist, a friend of mine, Mark Baldwin, who lives 600 yards away from the Neville ground in Tunbridge Wells. Okay. And he was on World Cup duty, but he missed that match. So it's remarkable stories behind that. There are some other myths also about the World Cup, which again, as I said, I'm not going to reveal everything. Why let the cat out of the bag? Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, you've already given us the biggest teaser, but Gulu, I want to tell our listeners as well that you have kindly, and your publisher Rupa Books has kindly agreed to give away 3 copies of this, what sounds like an absolutely amazing book, Myth Indian Cricket Behind the Headlines. I mean, it sounds absolutely amazing. And all you have to do to enter that giveaway contest, listeners, is to follow Gulu and Rupa Books on Twitter and retweet the tweet with the link to the podcast in it. And we will pick 3 lucky winners, which Gulu has also agreed to sign copies addressed personally to you.
Personally,
so, Gulu,
absolutely.
thank you so much for that. That's a really, really kind
My
gesture.
pleasure.
It'll be really nice for our listeners who win to get a copy personally autographed and sent to them. So it'll be sent to an Indian address. So guys, even though
That's
you
it.
live abroad, it'll go to an Indian address.
Exactly.
But Gulu, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you back on the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Thank you so very much for your time. And I, for one, really look forward to this myth-busting exercise that you've gone through. It sounds like it was an incredible effort in terms of research during COVID as well.
I must tell you, it's been a 50-year journey for me.
Right. And ending in
years.
COVID, I mean, at least
Yeah.
there was something good that came out of COVID, right?
Well, I suppose you could look at that. Yes, in one way. Yes. Great. It's been lovely
Indeed.
talking to you again, DC.
Yeah,
Great.
and it's
Thank
been
you.
great. Thank you for coming back on the podcast. It's lovely to have return guests, and thank you for being a friend of the podcast. And look forward to seeing you in person soon once all of this is over.
Cheers. All the best.
Thank you so much.